Thank you very much for the invitation and young, energetic journalists who are doing their best um, to disseminate information throughout the country in the regions. Thanks again for the invitation, and I'm glad to be here. This is Dougbeh-Chris Nyan. Well, thank you again for the question, which is the first to be addressed during this live chat. The question is, can I tell you about the view, my view about the role of scientists as it relates to vaccine development? Well, um, scientists in general play a very significant role in the development of a country or of a society in general. And in terms of our health and well being, which is important for any other sector to thrive, scientists play a very great role with the diseases, particularly the infectious diseases with which we are confronted we have been confronted throughout the ages. It is scientists who have confronted those challenges and have sought and worked to provide a solution to curbing those infectious diseases which have come out as epidemics and as pandemics. And scientists have also done the best to their ability to develop drugs to counter other diseases which are not just infectious diseases. And scientists have done and continue to work in ensuring that we live in a suitable environment. Uh, Scientists have also done their best as doctors to make sure that we have good health and are able to uh, uh, produce and provide our services as healthy individuals in the society. And so these are, among other things, uh, scientists have done. Now, when it comes to the COVID-19 with which we are confronted presently, you will see that scientists are at the front lines in ensuring that this pandemic is curbed. Now, as it relates to vaccine development specifically, then, given the first question that I was answering, um, scientists have been working very, very assiduously in ensuring that we have protection against this COVID-19. As you will note, the virus has already uh, taken over the entire world. Everywhere in the world is combating this disease, um, and so there has been enormous efforts to produce a vaccine against the COVID-19 infection, COVID-19 disease. The disease itself is caused by coronavirus 2, which is SARS-CoV-2, and the disease it causes is COVID-19. So the protection will be against COVID-19 and against the disease this virus causes. So yes, there have been efforts in the United Kingdom, in the United States, in China, and in other parts of the world to produce vaccines. And Africa is participating in so far as we are involved with the trials. And we can touch on those in specific questions as they come to the fore. Okay, there's a question regarding the phases of vaccine development that relates to any drug development for that matter. Is not restricted to only vaccine development, including the medications that we take that are prescribed for us, when we as patients go to the clinic. Um, First, there's a basic research that is done in the laboratory, and in order to evaluate several possibilities, several candidates from those basic research, a particular research group, a company, it could be a company or a federal facility or a different, some research group will then select several candidates from what they see as potential vaccines or potential drugs. And those will be then tried in doing an animal studies, for example, sometimes to first of all figure out, if the vaccine or if the drug candidate will work the way it is designed. In terms of the actual trials that then go on in a clinic, what which we refer to as clinical trials, there are four major phases. The first phase of the trial will deal with try to ask the question whether the drug is safe or whether the vaccine is safe. Since we're talking about COVID-19 vaccines presently, trials that are going on, the phase one trial are only asking the question: is this drug safe? If you put it in a human, so those drugs are evaluated during phase one trials. The phase two trials then look at the effectiveness of the vaccine itself. Is it eliciting? Is it because when the vaccines are put in us, what they do is that they cause our body and our biological system to produce certain defensive cells so that whenever we come in contact with that particular virus or say COVID-19 next time, our body remembers and then mount a response. That's how the vaccines work. And so that phase two trial then will be intended for evaluating the effectiveness. Uh, the phase three trial looks at then effectiveness, safety again, and then side effects. So this time you're looking at side effects. What kind of side effect does this drug or this vaccine have? So uh, those are the three major phases, and the particular that third phase will evaluate about say 100 or more persons. The first and second phases they evaluate very less, about 50 persons or so, 10 to 50. That's fine just to see the safety, and then the final phase that the trial goes through is the phase four trial, uh, whereby uh, thousands and thousands of patients are tested throughout, you know, uh, the time of the test. So again, that particular phase can last for a longer time. Now, you will note that uh, we have advances in biotechnology presently. So this can be speeded up with the participation, with the science, and with the opportunity of the enrichment in biotechnological knowledge that we have presently. There's a question here uh, asking about the stage at which the COVID-19 vaccine is presently, vaccine development is presently. Um, as I stated initially, uh, there are several companies, several biotechnology companies, biopharmaceutical companies that are developing vaccines. So far, we have about 220 or more vaccines, candidates being evaluated around the world. Most of those, there are several companies now that are in phase three trials. We have just gone through the various phases, phase one to phase four, and there are several companies that are in phase three trial presently. Uh, you will note that there is a trial going on in one of these companies, which is the uh, the it's not a company per se, but the University of Oxford is carrying out a trial, and one of those trials are going on in South Africa, where they have enrolled about 2,000 or so subjects for this drug to be for this vaccine to be tried. So most of the vaccines are now going. Most of the promising vaccines are now going through their phase three of clinical trials. Uh, Companies like Merck, Johnson and Johnson, Novavax, etc., are going through, I believe, their phase three trials, and they are showing promising results. So that hopefully, as we anticipate, within the next 6 months to a year, we may be having a potentially approved vaccine again within 6 months from now to a year. So we're looking at 12 months, hopefully less than that, to have an approved vaccine by the US FDA and other regulatory agencies around the world. Okay, there is a question here asking as to what I would recommend to the government of Liberia and the NFIL on curbing the pandemic, and what would that recommendation be? First and foremost, the government's response was very belated and complacent. The government was alerted far in advance, and I stand to say that I alerted the government far in advance with communications. Uh, like other countries around the world and in Africa, the government was pretty much complacent, but later put in place some mechanisms. At the stage at which the disease is presently and the transmission is going in Liberia, a couple of things need to be done. One, the incident management system needs to be reformed, restructured. It needs to have at its head the expertise that that is trained or that are trained to mount and devise epidemiological strategy to combat the virus. So you require someone who has that training to head it, to head the incident management system. The incident management system should be infused with a lot of epidemiologists, medical doctors, and biomedical scientists, if we have that in the country. There are a lot of them who are in the diaspora. The government could tap into that and invite those in the diaspora to participate on the incident management system. That's one. Two, the government will need to concentrate resources on supporting the efforts of the National Public Health Institute instead of diverting those resources to other things that are not essential for this response. Three, the government will have to concentrate on testing. In that sense, government will have to to put more emphasis on acquiring more testing kits, particularly accurate testing kits. I mean, we understand that a lot of kits have been produced in recent times in response to this COVID. Most of them have not been uh, properly peer-reviewed, studied to evaluate their accuracy and efficiency, but there are a lot of them, a couple of them that are proven efficient, and those the government could acquire and utilize so as to prevent the issue of wrong testing results, conflicting testing results, and wrong diagnosis, which we have seen being so prevalent within the Liberian testing regime. And So basically, that will be one of the few suggestions and recommendations that I will make to government. Also, the government should concentrate on an efficient contact tracing. In this respect, the 3,000 or more trained contact tracers that were trained during the Ebola outbreak in 2014, I believe are available and should not be sidelined. They should be incorporated into this process. They should have been the one mobilized to mount the response in fact, because among them you have people trained in epidemiological data processing. You have uh, uh, expertise trained in case finding. You have expertise trained in the actual contact tracing, and they were available. They had training anywhere between 3 months, 4 months to 9 months. Some were sent to the United States at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, and they carry out further training. And so we have the capacity so far, 3,000 of those who could have been deployed around the country appropriately to mount the kind of response that Liberia needed to mount, taking advantage of Liberia's experience with the Ebola outbreak, and from which we garnered most of our response also to responding to pandemics. Uh, and so I think that should be one of the other concentrations of government that I would recommend. And uh, the doctors in the country should be incorporated, should be properly utilized, and should not be sidelined. Government should provide them their requisite personal protective equipment that will be needed so as to safeguard them in terms of preventing infections among the health workers themselves. Because when the health workers are infected, you have a situation whereby it could lead to a total collapse of the health system, because then you have no doctors, you have no nurses that will attend to possible COVID infected patients. And in the testing centers, as well as the observation centers, you will have no or less doctors to attend to COVID infected patients or people under observation. So these are a few suggestions that I would recommend to the government, and I have been recommending. Also, I would think that the government should place emphasis on developing its own testing kits. We have, from my standpoint and expertise, proposed this to the government, and the government have yet to take up this particular offer. At that, Liberia will have her own testing kits developed, and we will not be struggling for testing kits. Ghana has done such. Senegal have also developed their own testing kits, and it is still going on evaluation. But at least those are efforts. The next question here is, why are scientists finding it so difficult to develop a COVID-19 vaccine as compared to Ebola virus disease vaccine that was developed? Well, COVID-19 is pretty new um, uh, as compared to Ebola virus. Ebola virus outbreak was first experienced in 1976 in what was then called Zaire. So since 1976, we've had over, say, 20 or so outbreaks. The major outbreak and the major epidemic being in Liberia and Zaire, which is the presently Democratic Republic of Congo. 2014 outbreak in West Africa, which affected Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Nigeria was involved also, and a few other countries where we had cross-border, cross-continental transmission in the United States and in Europe. Uh, so Ebola virus has been around for a long time. Now, fortunately, during the Ebola virus outbreak in West Africa, there were vaccine studies going on, and as you will note, those vaccines have been approved. The studies began in Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and in the United States. That was a multi-center study. And when the Ebola virus outbreak was curbed, that study was transferred to where we then had a subsequent outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. That study continued there, and the four phases of the study that we talked about earlier, phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four, were then utilized to evaluate that vaccine candidate or those vaccine candidates, and they were found to be effective and safe, and all the side effects that may be associated with it were documented. They were then sent to the US FDA. Those documentations, scientific documentations, were sent to the FDA and other regulatory agencies around the world, and it was approved for use. Coming to coronavirus disease 2, which is SARS-CoV-2 that causes COVID-19. SARS-CoV-2 is new. It just erupted last November or December in Wuhan, China. There have previously been SARS outbreak about, I think, 10 or 15 years ago, which was then the SARS-CoV-1. There were efforts made in trying to find vaccine to that. But because it was quickly curbed, I think efforts did not go so much. Now, this one, which erupted recently, which we now have as a pandemic, has affected the entire world. At the time, the SARS-CoV-1 was just China, but this one has infected the entire world. And so you will see that mankind, with the knowledge in vaccine development that we have, which has been augmented with high technology, we have gone to the race, of trying to develop vaccine for COVID-19. So we have a lot being done. But the problem is the new situation, which is the fact that this is a novel virus and it just erupted. There's not much known about it. So it's been taking time to develop this vaccine. But again, you want to ask, why are vaccine candidates being developed so fast, and they are at phase 3 trials and they are proving efficient, promising? Is because of the science, because of the high technology, and the collaboration among scientists, and collaboration among the world leading countries in order to have an effective vaccine being produced in the shortest possible time. Okay, the next question is that the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa started producing a vaccine, or started developing a vaccine on the continent. And what role has African scientists played? Well, you will note that Africa has a lot of brains. Africa has a lot of scientists within and outside of the continent. And we are versed in various aspects of the science: vaccine development, drug development, mounting response to epidemics, etc., etc. There are efforts going on all around the world, and I'm not quite familiar with the Witwatersrand University developing a vaccine, but that the question of vaccine development cannot be ruled out in South Africa, because South Africa is far ahead of other African countries in terms of its capacity, in terms of human, technical, and scientific capacity to develop a vaccine. So yes, this could be true, but when you compare African countries to European countries and the United States, our capacity is far less. And so the efforts may have been going on at the University of Witwatersrand, but probably due to certain limitations, they've not been able to speed up as fast as they could. Fortunately, because of those efforts, as have been recognized, and just to say also that South Africa is well experienced in clinical trials. So the vaccine development of the University of Oxford has now transcended in just being tried or carried out in the UK and other countries. It has now been sent to South Africa for trial. And I believe Witwatersrand University could be one of those that are actively participating in this particular trial. But we gave thanks to our South African colleagues for, giving the consent, and the South African government for giving the consent, for this drug to be tried there, this vaccine candidate, excuse me, to be tried there. You will note that there are what we call RRBs, Institutional Review Board, and Data Safety Monitoring Board, which are institutions or entities that are set, that are organized to follow up and approve to approve vaccine studies or approve drug studies. And these are the entities that once we have on the African continent, we will not be afraid, of any trials going on, because then we would have had those entities that will technically look at the data, look at the protocols, and approve or recommend changes, and then follow, the course of the trial by utilizing the Data Safety Monitoring Board. And so there will be no fear as to anything wrong being done to Africans or to any population in the world. Okay, there's a question here as to whether I have reviewed the interim guidance on clinical care for COVID-19 patients in Liberia. If yes, what is missing? I have requested the review. I have requested this document repeatedly, and no one has sent it to me. I have, in my possession, clinical care guidance of documents of other countries that I am liaising with and where I was. But for this, I haven't seen any from Liberia, except following the manner in which the particular response has been conducted, the approaches that have been taken, and and uh, and that's how I have been able to make particular suggestions and comments as to what needs to be done. Take for example the testing of dead bodies, which I kind of commented on sometimes ago, uh, that bodies were picked out in the streets. You don't know how long those bodies have been lying there. Bodies have been in the communities. You don't know how long those bodies have been lying there. Is it part of the protocol that you test these dead bodies under those conditions? Those were questions that I raised. That you cannot test such dead bodies if their living bodies were not under the observation unit care, and if they were never suspected of COVID, and if they went to the hospital under different conditions, for different conditions, different underlying conditions, heart diseases, kidney diseases, diabetes, etc. And so just picking up a body that had been lying in the street or in the community and testing it for COVID-19 and coming up with a positive result was very questionable, because the virus itself is an RNA virus, and RNA would degrade very quickly once the virus is no longer live within that dead corpse. So the scientific uh, process behind all of this was explained to the government. And so, yes, to this question, I have not received it. And I certainly do look forward to receiving it at any point in time and to make specific corrections. Again, there is another question here from Betty Johnson Mbayo, saying that she's concerned about the testing. How reliable is it? Mostly the testing kits. And I believe in my previous answers, I did run through a little bit of the testing. Uh, eh, eh, the testing that is being done in Liberia should be reevaluated. Again, I have requested information on the testing kits being used in Liberia from the inception of this outbreak. If anyone did follow my work you will note that I did raise a question about the faulty COVID-19 testing kit from the United States Centers for Disease Control, which was sent to many African countries and was initially used in the United States also. It was recognized that that testing kit was faulty, and the U.S. government itself raised concern about that. And there was a big issue about that. There were congressional hearings, and that kit was discontinued. And I raised the alarm to African countries and Liberia, since we have CDC representatives in Liberia and we have CDC presence in other countries around Africa, that this kit has been discontinued. If you've not yet heard about it, you should discontinue using it if it is in use in your particular country. So this was the caveat: if it is in use in your particular country. I got a backlash from the National Public Health Institute, which then put out a release on me that I was not saying the truth. Later to know that everything that I was alarming about was truthful. There are documentations available to that. Now, that brings me to the kits that were sent in through the humanitarian efforts of Jack Ma. Those kits were brought from China, as I understand, and were taken to the African CDC headquarters in Addis Ababa, and then were distributed around the world. How long did those kits stay on the ground? When they were sent to the various sub-distribution centers for West Africa, I think it was Nigeria. How long did it stay in Nigeria before being transported? So you have to look at then uh, the stability of those reagents and chemicals that are contained in those kits, the chain transfer, where some of those reagents subjected to cold chain transfer, and so what conditions under which they were. And those are the kits that we were using. Those I know about. Other kits that have come into the country in Liberia, I have no idea about. And so, with the multiplicity of conflicting testing results that we have encountered in Liberia that have been reported, with many patients questioning their testing results, the latest one being the result of the Professor Alaric Tokwa, who was given a negative result printed out on the sheet and signed by the National Public Health Director, and later on told verbally that he had a positive result. Uh, this is very conflicting. This is troubling, and has to be properly evaluated, by the scientific community. And I hope the incident management team is looking into these reports of these conflicting results and of COVID-19 testing. And so I cannot definitely say, or speak of the reliability of the testing that is going on in Liberia with regard to COVID-19. My experience with Rwanda is completely different. They're very efficient. They have very good testing capacity, and they've been doing pretty well. They have lots of testing sites, uh, uh, about what 7 to 15 now, I can say. Liberia only has one major testing facility, which is the National Public Health Reference Laboratory. And as I understand, there was efforts to establish another testing facility. If that had been established or not, I am not aware of that. And so I will only stick with Liberia having, one major, and again, I'm saying one major testing facility. Initially, I had also proposed coming into the country with my team of scientists in order to, again, develop Liberia's testing kits and train personnel, laboratory diagnostic personnel, and establish testing centers in various regions, southern region, northern region, and probably the central region, so that we could have 4 additional testing centers besides the National Public Health Reference Laboratory. But these offers were not responded to by the government. Instead, there were efforts aimed at mounting uh, whatever campaign against the offers that I made. And I don't want to go into that. That's a discussion for another time. But just sticking to this discussion, that's the situation with testing. Okay, another question is how can Liberia benefit from COVID-19 vaccine equity when we are not investing in the development? Very good question. In one of my appearances on one of the local stations in Monrovia, Power 9 TV FM, uh, I proposed this that, and I asked the same question, you know, particularly so with the recent $30 million that was sourced by the government from in order to carry out food distribution and as part of the COVID-19 response. My question was that why can't some of this money be used to invest in some of these companies that are producing these vaccines? I specifically, if I can remember, say government could take like $10 million of that money and invest it in one of these companies, a promising company like we have now the Oxford University, we have Merck, we have Novavax, and we have Johnson and Johnson that have come out with very promising results. And so that in the event where these vaccines are produced, we will then have that arrangement with them to provide us the vaccine at much reasonable cost that will be able to afford us having vaccines for our citizens. And another question was why couldn't the government invest in or take some of this money and use it for sourcing, vaccine at a cheaper rate. That is, taking some of this money to say, okay, we are taking $4 million. Since we have a 4.5 million population or so, we are taking $4 million. Can any philanthropic organization out there match our $4 million to make it $8 million? Then we go to the vaccine companies and say, hey, uh, we're a poor country, you know. Can you give us doses of this vaccine at a very cheap price? This is the amount we have. From your humanitarian standpoint, or company A or company B, can you then match this amount of money that we have already got to give us the vaccine at a very, very reasonable and cheaper rate to cover maybe about 1 million or 1.5 million people in the country initially, So these were the suggestions that I made. And that is the situation with the question of Liberia's participation, whether Liberia, is participating in this vaccine development or is sourcing NN funds in order to make sure that vaccines are available. You will note that the countries that are heavily investing in it, the United States, for example, have already given one of the companies $1 billion in order to provide 400 million plus doses of vaccine. Can you imagine? They have invested 1 billion, Billion, $1 billion in one of the companies. They have invested a lot of money in other companies. So these countries that are investing will be the first to get their vaccines for their citizens. What will be left for Africa and Liberia being involved, as you specifically Liberia and the rest of Africa and the poorer countries, when all of these vaccines then would have been bought out by the big countries. So you can see the geopolitical economics of the whole COVID-19 and this vaccine development. So I hope the government, can rethink its strategy. And I will add this to the recommendations that I stated earlier, that one of the recommendations should be that the government should utilize some of that $30 million, if that $30 million is still existing, to invest in one of these companies. Okay, there is a question here that there information about COVID-19 being a quote unquote man-made virus. And what can I say about that? During my series of pandemic response awareness, COVID-19 pandemic response awareness in Liberia and Africa and parts of the world, since those awareness were transmitted through radio and internet means around the world, I address these questions in the initial stages of the pandemic, of the outbreak. One, I would say emphatically that the virus is not man-made, not that I know of scientifically. The virus is not man-made. We've come to know as information has now become available. Initially, we didn't have enough information on this. Information is available scientifically that this virus came from animals in a fresh meat, fresh food market in Wuhan, China. And these viruses are known to be some of the viruses which we have come to know now of this virus, SARS-CoV-2, is a zoonotic virus, meaning it is a virus that can be transmitted from animals to humans. That's why we call zoonotic viruses. So that's where the virus came from an animal. It is most likely that it came from a bat or from pangolin, because this virus has been isolated, meaning we have seen it in these animals that I have just listed. And so the virus is not man-made. It is natural. And again, let me say that these viruses have been around for years, for thousands of years. But they express their infectious ability at some point in time in history or in human history, in the evolution, in the evolutionary line. So, you know, this is the point at which the virus got its high ability and was able to come out of the animal system, which is the reservoir. Reservoir meaning where it is living, the host, which is the initial host. So those animals are the initial host, and then we are, it's transmitted from them to us through, respiratory means, through respiratory droplets, and of course, we've now come to know that it is airborne, which are stated in the initial stages that this virus could be transmitted through the air, for which you need to stand 7 feet away from any individual instead of the 6 feet that we were talking about. And I indicated that when you are in breezy area, coastal area, where there's a lot of breeze, definitely the breeze could carry the air, the air could carry this virus from one person to another, where I initially postulated that it was airborne. And several scientists have now come out to sign a petition, scientific petition, to say to the WHO, the World Health Organization, to say that this virus is airborne. So that postulation has been confirmed, or as has been backed up. So that is how this virus is. That is how it is transmitted. And when it is transmitted, you feel headache, fever, cold. You start to get other symptoms like what we call neurologic symptoms. I'm trying not to use a lot of technical terms. That's why you see me hesitating to find the simplest words to use. Neurologic symptom meaning sometimes you lose your taste, you lose your smell, because those neurons that are responsible for those things may be affected by the virus. So then you don't have a sense of taste, you don't have a sense of smell. You lose those things. and many other major symptoms. In children now, we also see that they have some reddish rashes on their skin. That's what we've seen clinically, and several other symptoms, which include, of course, the very respiratory symptom, difficulty in breathing, which at the end is the characteristic of this virus, for which it is called SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome. That difficulty in breathing then will lead you to lead the patient to being put on assisted breathing with oxygen or ventilator. And if the virus overwhelms the system, and those ventilators and the oxygen cannot help you, the patient succumbs. And so there have been a lot of efforts in the scientific community to make sure that medications are developed, drugs are developed, or combination of drugs which we already know existing are tried. And we found that remdesivir is a drug that works effectively once done, with the at the time of the ventilation and with oxygen treatment. And there is still argument, and there is still controversy, and there is still no convincing data that two other drugs, hydroxychloroquine and hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine work. They don't. We have not seen any convincing evidence yet. There is still argument on that. So they are not used and or approved to be used for treatment. They are still being tested. Other people are still coming up with results that they work. Other people say other scientists say they don't work. So the verdict is still out there. And I'm one of those who advise that our countries don't use chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine for treatment. They should not use it until it is cleared and proven. Since it has not yet been officially approved, like remdesivir has been officially acclaimed as somewhat effective against the virus, that can be employed in line with ventilation and oxygenation. Okay, there is a question here about uh, conspiracy theories again. This disbelief and question about whether African countries have a concerted efforts in making sure that these trials are going on within guidelines. Uh, and I would say yes. The Africa CDC has done a lot of work along with the WHO in order to make sure that any trials that will be done on the African continent is done within internationally acceptable standards, and that we have our institutional review boards in place, and that the data safety monitoring board, those two entities that I spoke about earlier, are in place, and that the requisite consent is given by the WUBI participants in this study in terms of the subjects, and that African scientists are also involved. As you will see, the studies that are going on in the Oxford vaccine study that is going on in South Africa, those are African scientists that are involved. So, we can say, yes, African scientists are involved with the process. And so, yes, the Africa CDC and the WHO have done a lot of work in ensuring that trials of vaccine or anything done on the African continent should be done in according to international standards. You will also note that I did voice out my concern about that and made a position on that, indicating that studies to be done in Africa should be done under multi-center trial, meaning that it shouldn't be only Africa, it should be other countries, so as to ensure, you know, that confidence and alleviate all of the doubt that Africans are the ones only being targeted and used as experimental animals. And so I definitely did speak on that, that it should be a multi-center trial, and that the trials should be done, within internationally acceptable standards. Also, I did indicate and recommended, just in line with the WHO and the Africa CDC, that we need to form our own entities. That is our IRBs, which is the Institutional Review Board, and have participation on the data safety monitoring boards, so that our people from the continent that will be participating in these studies as subjects will have the confidence that they have their own sons and daughters on these scientific boards and in these scientific entities, and can safeguard their interests, and that they are not just being used as guinea pigs. I will add that during the Ebola vaccine trial, I was on the data safety monitoring board. Dr. Lisa Cooper of the Johns Hopkins University, another Liberian, was on the data safety monitoring board. We had two other colleagues from Sierra Leone and Guinea that were also on the board. And we have several of our scientists on the African continent, including Dr. Stephen Kennedy and Dr. Masakwe, and several others in the region that were either principal or co-principal investigators. So with our participation, at least it did help to alleviate the notion that Africa was just being singled out and selected to try this Ebola vaccine virus. So same thing is applying now to this COVID-19 vaccine trial, since we raised those concerns from the scientific community looking at the interests of Africa and humanity as a whole. Okay, there is another question here as we're talking about vaccines, about this Madagascar herbal tea that was that they claim had the potential, or this they claim could cure coronavirus and could prevent it. Uh, well, I have also voiced out my professional expert opinion on this particular Madagascar COVID herbal drink. That one, they did not produce any data to show that it was safe. Remember, we talked about safety and efficacy in those trials. They did not produce any observational study to show us any data that it was safe, that it was effective. Uh, they did not show any clinical trials data, and when they came out with the claim that, boom, this was a cure for COVID-19. And so it is still questionable. I don't know where that is now, but it is unfortunate that our government, with the help of the National Public Health Institute, and I believe with the Ministry of Health, had this drug imported, this not drug per se, this tea, herbal tea from Madagascar, brought into the country and used in the country. We had several discussions about this, and I voiced out my opinion against that there was no scientific basis of bringing this herbal tea into Liberia, that they should not have had a precedent going to receive this herbal tea in the first place, and that the argument that they wanted to conduct studies on it as well did not even stand, also because Liberia does not have the capacity to conduct a study on such concoction to know its actual ingredients and or content. Um, Liberia does not have the technical capacity to do that. It does not have the facility to do that. Uh, the National Public Health Director on air on Spoon TV and FM indicated at one time that they were going to carry out, draw up protocols to study it. And my question was, but what was the protocol, the study protocol used by those who produced it. I, I would think that's what we needed to know first. What were their results? Because if you're going to study any medication, any vaccine, any drug, anything, you need to know the results that were produced by the manufacturer or by the inventor or by the innovator before, because you're going to study it in order to reproduce it. So you needed to know that. So my question was, did they have those information on hand? I mean, the obvious answer was no, because there was never any study done on this COVID uh, herbal drink from Madagascar. The scientists who they claim invented this could not come out to defend this claim. It was only the political elite headed by the president of Madagascar that were touting this drink. And so I believe at one point the WHO said, okay, we will we can subject this drink to a trial, so as to give you the benefit of the doubt. And that particular statement was then misinterpreted by many to mean that the WHO had approved it. No, the WHO did not approve it, and I can stand for the WHO on this. The WHO did not approve that drink. The WHO only said, okay, if you are insisting, then let's give it a chance. Let's try it. Let's try, meaning let's study it and see, and to evaluate the claims you are making that it is effective and that it is safe. So yeah, that's the situation with this drink. Well, I see that you're waiting on my final statement. I want to really thank you all for this interaction. I very well appreciate it. I think it is rewarding to all of us. The questions were very salient, were very pointed, and raised a lot of concerns as you represent, the ears of the general population. So thank you very much. We can do this again when issues come about that you may want to address, and I will always be available based on the arrangements we made. So thank you very much, and I appreciate the time. Thank you, and do the best you can in educating our people. Radios go all around the world now since they are transmitted through the internet. So your work will be heard all around the world. Whatever advocacy you carry out will not be only for Liberia these days. It will be for Africa and the rest of the world. So thank you very much, and I highly appreciate it. Bye bye.